So here we go. I got asked for a tutorial on the UFO over London, so here we are. It's going to be a fairly quick tutorial, so I hope you can keep up. It's quite a simple thing to do, really. All it is a movie showing in the background and the UFO. So let's start. First thing I did was I found a movie and downloaded it. I'm not too worried about copyright because it's being altered quite a bit. So I'm using this movie in the background, and to get it into the background, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to delete the standard cube, and I'm going to view front like so. I'm going to align my camera view with that, like so. So now the camera views the front, and I'm going to import, and I've had a question recently, import images as planes, and the way that you turn that on is that you go into your user preferences, go into add-ons, you type in IM for images, image, and you've got these options, and import export images as planes is what you want, and if that little box isn't ticked, you tick it, then you hit save user settings and you close, and now when you open file you've got that extremely useful import images as planes. Now I'm going to download it direct from, I'm going to put it in direct from my downloads directory, which I wouldn't recommend you do. And the surprising thing you will find is that images as files also imports movies, which makes it even more useful, and a lot of people don't realise that. You can actually have a movie playing in the background of your Blender quite easily. There's a number of ways of doing it. You can use Blender's movie editor. And what I've done there is I've just lifted the plane on end 90 degrees. Okay, view camera again, you can see there it is. I'm going to scale it up so that it just about fills the whole screen. And if you turn textures on, now I happen to know that this particular movie doesn't start until around about frame 60 because it's got a big black thing at the start of it. So if I turn textures on, at the moment it's going to be black. If I go to 60, render image, this is one slight problem. Whoops, hang on a minute, I need to change some settings in the material first. So change some settings in the material. What I'm going to do is I'm going to give it an image value of 1, and I'm going to make it shadeless. Bang, there you go, immediately you've got the movie appear. Okay, so this is a bit of a trick that lets you have a bright background. So there we go, that's the background in, and we look at the texture, it's only affecting colour, which is what we want, and it's UV mapped to that there, and at the moment we're only like using 100 frames of it. I'm going to hit match movie length because it doesn't matter to me, and I'm going to hit, I don't know, 1600 or something, because this is going to be very fast to render. So the next thing to do is to add in a UFO, and that can be anything you like. I'm just going to do a very simple one now. So I'm going to add in a reasonably high resolution UV sphere, segments something like 80, rings something like, I don't know, 34 or something, and I'm going to move it down, and if I view top, and we can see where the camera is. The camera is there, so I'm going to move it towards the camera quite a bit. I'm going to scale it up quite a bit, and what I want to do is get rid of this back half. There's no point in having the back half in because we're never going to see it. So I'm going to go to edit mode. I'm going to select that little thing down there, which lets me select absolutely everything, even stuff I can't see. Hit A to deselect, B for a box select, and I'm just going to select the back half of it. X vertices, and there you go, the back half of it is gone. We're back to object mode again. Now we don't want our UFO as a sphere, that would be pretty silly, that would block everything out. What we want is a flattened shape like a UFO, and we can do that by scaling it down in the Z axis, like so. And let's have a look through the camera, see what we've got. At the moment we're not in there, that's fine. And you can have as much of this UFO showing as you want, and you can do that by scaling it. I'll hit the scale, I'll make it a bit bigger than what I had previously, squash it in the Z, and that's a bit bigger than I had it in my previous example. Now on this particular video the camera actually flies around because it's taken from a helicopter, so I'm not going to worry about changing the UFO's position or rotation or anything else. I will do something slightly different in this video, which I'll explain later on. Right, now we want to add a material to that. I've got a texture that I use a lot, so I'm just going to add this in. Just add a default material, new texture, image or movie, and for anything like this I've got this really nice texture that I use, which is a spaceship hull texture that I've had for a long time. I've forgotten where I got it from now. It's one that I downloaded and then altered a bit because it was not working quite very well. And you can see what it looks like. It's just bunches of squares and things. That's what it looks like as a plane, because essentially this thing here is a plane. So I'm going to make that a cubic projection, and the colour I'm going to make it affect maybe about half. Geometry I'm going to make it affect 0.6 or something like that. Then I want it to be a metallic type surface, so I'm going to keep the intensity reasonably low, wind the specular up a bit, wind the hardness up a bit, and wrong one, don't want transparency, I want mirror. The mirror is going to be up towards the top end. I'm going to take that towards the blue, and now if we render, voila, we have quite a convincing spaceship hull that's reflecting the buildings. You don't need to worry in this case about the sky, because of the shape of the ship it's only going to reflect what's in front of it, which is another reason why this is a really simple tutorial. Right, so if we show hard render view, what I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate that to make the force field around the ship, and it's already selected, so I'm just going to hit duplicate. As you can see, it's duplicated it. I hit escape, I'm going to hit scale. Now at the moment it's the same material as the ship. Obviously we don't want that, and because it's duplicated it's linked, so what we have to do is to make it a single user, and we want the object, data, materials and texture to be single user. Selected objects, yes. So now we can change, we can get rid of this, we can change that. We can make it new material. It's going to be nice blue colour, nice bright blue colour, something like that. No specularity to it, so that's all the way down. Emit, yeah, we're going to give it some emission. We're going to give it maybe, I'm going to make it a bit brighter than it was. I'm going to make it 1. It's not shadeless, by the way. Transparency we want, and it's going to be Z transparency, not ray trace. Maybe around about the 0.094, 0.1, something like that, and specular a little bit. So, like that, and now we'll render that. You can see we've got this blue glow, but we can see the top edge of it, so we're going to have to do something about that. And the thing we're going to do is we're going to cheat. I'm going to come this way, I'm going to scale it in that direction slightly, I'm going to move it in that direction. You can see I'm exposing the edge of the ship there. I'm going to stop it before then. View camera, and as you can see now the edge isn't in view. If we render that, you can see we've still got a nice force field around it. It's fine, it's maybe not quite big enough. So I'm going to move that forward just a little bit. I'm going to move it up just a little bit. Hopefully, yeah, that's better. So now we've got our force field about where we want it. Now, just a plain old force field like that isn't very exciting, so I'm going to pattern it. And here's how we do that. Go into textures, we go into Voronoi texture. This is one I like using for things like this. And we'll have both. We don't want it to affect the colour. Well, you might want to. I'll tell you what I will. What I'll do is I'm going to make that brighter blue. Like so. I'm going to make it affect the colour, but it's not going to be 1. Just to give it some subtle colour variation. We don't want it to affect anything else except the alpha. And it's going to have quite a lot of effect on the alpha. You can see already we've got this patterning forming. Now we can change that by changing the brightness and the contrast. Obviously if we brighten it right up we lose it, but we want to dim it down a bit, so that we get something like that, so that we get these patterns appear. And let's see if the size is right. You see now we've got these misty sort of patterns appear, and the size wants to be a bit smaller, so we come down here, 0.25, maybe make it 0.1, see what that looks like. And yeah, that's fine. Now maybe the alpha is actually a bit too strong in the material, so we'll go back to the material. I'm going to turn that alpha down even further. There we go. Now, we don't just want this texture to be static, we want it to move. Now, what I did before is I put an empty in and made it randomly move all over the place. I've decided I don't like that. I'm still going to put an empty in, because that's how we make our textures move. So I'm going to go to, hang on a minute, add empty. It doesn't matter where it is because you'll never see it. I'm going to move it up out of the way though, so I don't like to watch it. It's funny that, isn't it? And I'm going to make this rotate. I'm going to make it go round and round for the duration of the animation, so the textures should sweep round and round as if the field was spinning, even though the object is still, which I think will be an interesting effect. So I'm going to insert a rotation keyframe there, which will be at 0, 0 obviously. I want it just to rotate in this axis, which is the Z axis. So I'm going to go to the end of our animation, which is frame 1600, and I know we can't see it there, but fine. There we go, end of our animation there. And I'm going to make it do, 4 complete rotations, and 4 times 360 is 1440, so 1440 degrees, or minus 1440 if you wanted to go the opposite direction. And I'm going to go into the graph editor. So here we go, Z Euler rotation. Oh, silly person, I didn't insert. Let's go back into 3D view. Didn't insert my rotation keyframe. That's better. On the last frame. So go into the graph editor. You can see here we go, and we want interpolation mode to be linear, so that it starts rotating and it keeps rotating. Right. So if we move this forward, we can see backwards and forwards, we can see the axes on this empty rotating, and that's exactly what we want. Now all we need to do is link that empty to our texture. So we'll select the field, go into its material settings, texture, and down here where it's coordinates it says generated, we want object. The object we're going to have is our empty, and that should make the field spin round and round. I'm going to go into setup render, so I'm going to render it now, render the animation now. Anti-aliasing 16. I prefer recently to use CAM or ROM, but what you use obviously is up to you. The output, I'm going to put it just on the desktop. I'm going to add a file name onto the output, or rather file name beginning UFO1T for tutorial, that'll do. And I'm going to write it direct to video, which people don't like me doing, but I'm going to do it, and it's going in X video format. So here we go, render animation, and I'll see you soon. Whoops, something I forgot to do. And something I forgot to do was to add in a start frame of 60. And I'm not going to render all 1600 frames. I'll do, I don't know, 300, because it's going to be quite a quick render. There we go. Render animation. That's a bit better, isn't it? And now I look at it, I've decided this texture is too busy. It's too small. You can't see the reflections of the building in the UFO. So I'm going to hit escape. I'm going to change that texture again. I'm going to change the size from 0.1 to 0.2 because 0.25 was a bit too big. Let's have a look at that. That's better. Now you can kind of see the UFO underneath it. It's not perfect, but there we go. Render animation. I'll just render a few frames and look at it for long enough to see that the texture is in fact rotating. I'm looking down here, looking at the position of that bit there. See if it moves. Yes, it's moving. So that's all we need to do. So I'm going to pause you and come back. Okay, so I've rendered about 4 or 5 seconds worth, enough for you to see what's going on. And we'll stop that there. Just click the cross next to the render or hit escape. And we'll go and have a look and see what we've got. If I was to do that again, I would actually move the empty to the center of this UFO, so that the field would actually swirl around the UFO. So let's do that, and I'll re-render so you can see what it looks like then. So we want object snapped cursor to selected. So there's the cursor. We're going to take our empty object snap selection to cursor. Now if you remember, the animation frames I set earlier deliberately were not location. They were purely rotation. So if I go through this, it stays where it is, like so. And now we'll just render the animation again. So I've rendered about 3 or 4 seconds again, and we'll just stop the render and let's see what we've got. As you can see, now it's rotating, the field is rotating about the central axis of our craft. It's going a bit fast. Were I to do it again, I'd slow it down. There's other things that you can do as well to make it more interesting. You could animate the size of the texture. You could animate the size of the actual field. You can make it pulse in and out, which I did a tiny little bit on my other video. In fact, you could do whatever the heck you like. Now what I'm going to suggest is that if you want to try something like this, you do it, you pick your own video. Could be New York, could be anywhere. You make your own UFO, make it whatever shape you like, could even be an aircraft wing, and do what you want with it. And post it as a comment. Post a link to it as a comment on this video, and we'll have